Buckle up, folks. We're diving into a cinematic masterpiece that's basically Armageddon meets Home Alone, but with a twist that'll have you choking on your popcorn from laughter. So, in this futuristic laugh fest, Earth finds itself on the wrong side of a cosmic billiards game. Picture this. A giant space rock, the size of, I don't know, Texas. It's hurtling towards Earth with a "you're it" attitude, ready to play a game of planetary pinball. And what's humanity's grand plan? Shoot it with super-duper nukes from the moon. Because, of course, when you've got a problem, the answer is always explosions in space. Enter the UNAMIS, which probably stands for United Nations Moonshooters, or something equally snappy. Led by the ever-determined Chinese government. Their mission: to turn the moon into a nuclear launch pad. After 8 years of head-scratching and probably a ton of PowerPoint presentations, they're ready to give that asteroid a welcome it won't forget. Cut to the lunar surface, where our hero, Dan, an engineer with a work ethic as solid as Swiss cheese, is swooning hard over his boss, Commander Jenny. She's all business, reprimanding him for slacking off when, let's be honest, they're about to shoot nukes at a space rock. Love in the time of interstellar missile crisis, am I right? But wait, the plot thickens. A solar storm, because the universe apparently wanted to add drama queen to its resume, knocks one of the missiles off course. This leaves our moon base in a bit of a pickle, with asteroid leftovers heading their way. Commander Jenny, in true hero fashion, orders an evacuation. Meanwhile, Dan's so lost in his daydreams, he might as well be floating in space. Realizing he's about to miss his Uber out of there, Dan dashes for the last rocket, only to play tag with a giant hole on the lunar surface. Commander Jenny, ever the punctual pilot, takes off without him. Dan, now the loneliest man on the moon, watches as the asteroid shower decorates the lunar landscape with new craters. After playing hide-and-seek with death, Dan wakes up, only to find Earth getting its makeover from the misdirected asteroid. With his team gone, and no one answering his calls, Dan faces the reality that he might be the last human DJ spinning tracks in the universe. His reaction? To throw a pity party with enough food to last a lifetime. But loneliness makes you do weird things. Dan, missing his crush something fierce, sets up the most epic date night with a DIY figure of Commander Jenny. Because nothing says romance like dining with an inanimate object under the glow of Earth's new crater feature. So, just when you thought our moon-based soap opera couldn't get any wackier, it turns out Dan isn't the only human giving the apocalypse a thumbs down. Down on Earth, Commander Jenny and the gang are holed up in what's essentially a fancy bunker, watching Dan's descent into moon madness, specifically his hot and heavy makeout session with her photo. You can just picture the awkward glances and choked back laughs as they watch, probably munching on popcorn thinking, wow, we really dodged a bullet there. Or rather, an asteroid. But wait, there's a twist. The project's big cheese thinks Dan's one-man show of lunacy is just the motivational TED Talk Earth needs. Let's show them, Dan, the lunar lovelorn, he says, hoping to spark some hope among the asteroid-battered survivors. Minor snag in the plan. They can't actually talk to Dan thanks to the asteroid playing whack-a-mole with Earth's communication systems. Back on the moon, our hero stumbles upon a mystery. A torn food packet and noises that stir his heart and loins with hope. Is it a lady? Am I not alone? Can I finally stop talking to my Commander Jenny cardboard cutout? Dan muses as he tiptoes towards what he hopes is his new Eve. Plot twist. It's a kangaroo. Yes, you heard that right. A kangaroo named Kong, munching away at their dwindling food supply, presumably wondering how it got roped into this interstellar sitcom. Dan, ever the problem solver, grabs a shovel, thinking he can shoo the animal away. Spoiler alert, it doesn't go well. Kong, clearly not a fan of Dan's approach, decides to give him a taste of kangaroo justice. After a failed attempt at kangaroo cosplay seduction, yes, things get weirder. Dan finds himself on the wrong end of a kangaroo crush. With Earth watching, because of course the broadcast works one way, Dan pulls out a Gatling gun and goes to town with plastic balls. The kangaroo, unimpressed, decides to engage in a bit of fisticuffs, leading to a Looney Tunes-worthy scuffle that ends with both combatants knocked out. As Dan licks his wounds, he notices the comms flicker back to life. Hope, he thinks, not realizing it's just Kong's tail causing interference. In a moment of delusional optimism, he declares to Kong, "We're going home, buddy," only to receive a punch as a response. Classic kangaroo. Fast forward 200 days, and it's like an episode of Survivor Moon Edition. Dan and Kong, now frenemies, are plotting an escape to Earth using leftovers from Apollo 18. The plan? Hitch a ride to a space station and then Earth. Because after boxing with a kangaroo, how hard can piloting decades-old spacecraft be? So, Dan and his marsupial sidekick, Kong, embark on a mission that sounds like it was cooked up after a night of binge-watching sci-fi movies and consuming questionable amounts of lunar cheese. Dan discovers their getaway rocket has the carrying capacity of a shopping bag, 20 pounds to be exact. But fear not, because Dan's brainwave hits. Let's use a nuclear weapon for propulsion, because when you're stuck on the moon, obviously, the solution is to go nuclear. Armed with optimism and a kangaroo, Dan sets off across the moon, which is suddenly the size of a small country. Back on Earth, Commander Jenny and crew are biting their nails, watching Dan's solar-powered joyride. Because, the moon totally lacks other viable energy sources, and Dan's decided that AAA doesn't cover lunar services. The plan? Chase the sun across the moon. Because apparently, Dan's turned into a celestial cowboy. The moon's leisurely spin rate gives him 41 days to complete this road trip, with mandatory insomnia because sleep is for losers. As the days tick by, Dan's mind starts playing reruns of The Twilight Zone, with Kong as his furry motivational speaker. Eventually, they hit jackpot at the research facility, finding the nuclear warhead like it's the last Easter egg. But just as Dan's about to pat himself on the back, Kong decides it's playtime with nuclear buttons. Because what's a high-stakes mission without a bit of comedy? On the trek back, Dan, in a moment of brilliance, locks Kong in the trunk to prevent further nuclear hijinks, turning up the tunes to drown out the lunar silence. Classic Dan, so engrossed in his space karaoke, he doesn't notice when Kong and the trunk part ways. Miles later, Dan's oops moment dawns on him. Kong's MIA, and Dan's torn between rescuing his hoppy friend and chasing the ever-elusive sunlight. After an internal debate worthy of a daytime drama, he opts for the heroic rescue, because who can resist those kangaroo puppy eyes? Cue the emotional reunion, complete with kangaroo licks and possibly a slow-motion run towards each other if they weren't on the moon. With Kong back in the passenger seat, they resume their lunar escape attempt, fighting sleep like it's the final boss in a video game. But alas, even heroes have their limits. The sun, playing hard to get, leaves our intrepid travelers in a cold, dark pickle. So, the solar-powered moon buggy, which I'm pretty sure was assembled from an IKEA flat pack, is on its last legs. Dan, in a stroke of genius or desperation, the line's pretty thin here, decides to turn off the heating. Because who needs warmth when you're literally freezing your spacesuit off? So, there they are, Dan and Kong, cruising along until the buggy breathes its last and stops 55 kilometers from home base. With the oxygen ticking away, Dan does what any reasonable person would do. He contemplates his life choices and prepares for a dramatic, moon-dusty finale. But wait, Dan's survival instincts kick in when he notices Kong's fascination with shiny objects. In a move that's half MacGyver, half Santa Claus, he rips the car door off to fashion a makeshift sled, powered by kangaroo. Yes, folks, you heard that right. Our man Dan turns into a lunar musher, using flashlight beams to steer Kong across the moon's surface. It's like the Iditarod, but with less snow and more kangaroo. Just when you think it can't get any more bonkers, they encounter a giant pit. But does Dan give up? Nope. He goes full-action hero, using a gas tank for an impromptu moon leap. It's like watching a budget sci-fi movie where the special effects are so bad, they're good. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the project chairman decides to turn Dan's moonlight escapade into the greatest reality show ever broadcasted to the handful of humans still kicking around post-asteroid apocalypse. It's like Bear Grylls Moon Edition, giving everyone that glimmer of hope they desperately need. If Dan can sled across the moon powered by a kangaroo, maybe, just maybe, they can survive this mess. Back to our lunar duo. They make it back to base, warhead in tow, ready to play Armageddon heroes. But plot twist. Another asteroid is en route to Earth, because apparently, the universe decided Earth hasn't had enough fun yet. Just as Dan's about to celebrate with a cold one, he gets a signal. He's over the moon, thinking Earth's trying to get in touch. But nope, it's just Kong causing technical difficulties. Again, Dan's roller coaster of emotions takes another dive. But Earth isn't ready to unfriend Dan yet. In a scene that's probably aiming for touching but lands squarely in the "are you kidding me" territory, everyone on Earth points their flashlights at the moon in a cosmic kumbaya moment. Dan, touched by this galaxy brain gesture, wipes away a tear, his heart swelling with hope. Fueled by love, hope, and probably a dangerous level of sleep deprivation, Dan pours his heart out to Commander Jenny, confessing she's the reason he signed up for this moonshot mission. Jenny, moved by his declaration, does what any good romantic lead does: apologizes for stranding him in space. With the clock ticking and a second asteroid playing chicken with Earth, Dan and Kong get to work on their nuclear-powered Uber back to Earth. They blast off, leaving the moon behind, blissfully unaware of the incoming space rock aiming to give Earth a makeover. In a dramatic twist that no one saw coming, except maybe those who've watched every space disaster movie ever, the UNMS headquarters has a eureka moment. Dan, our favorite lunar cowboy, is humanity's last hope. Why? Because he's got the only thing that can save us from space rock doom: a nuclear bomb, chilling on the lunar space station like it's waiting for its big Hollywood moment. Commander Jenny, probably fighting the urge to facepalm, breaks the news to Dan. And in a plot twist that surprises absolutely no one, Dan agrees to play the hero. Because who wouldn't jump at the chance to save humanity with high explosives? So, with the world holding its breath and probably updating their wills, everyone's sent scurrying back to their shelters, while Dan has a teary goodbye with Kong. Yes, our hero is sending his kangaroo pal back to Earth in an escape pod. Presumably because Dan's just not ready for a Kangaroo Jack sequel. Dan, now emotionally compromised but determined, heads towards the asteroid field, which apparently got its vibe from a demolition derby. Dodging space rocks like he's in an arcade game, Dan's ship takes a hit and starts spinning like a record. In a move that screams, "I saw this in a movie once," he pops the ship's door to stop the spin because, of course, space physics is just that simple. Finding the ship's engine toast, Dan decides to go full superhero and take the bomb to the asteroid manually. Because who needs a spaceship when you've got a jetpack and a nuclear bomb, right? This is the part where we remind ourselves that no kangaroos were harmed in the making of this movie. As he makes his kamikaze run, Dan's spacesuit starts to look like Swiss cheese, thanks to the asteroid belt's warm welcome. In his final moments, he thinks of Commander Jenny, because nothing says romance like sacrificing yourself with a nuclear bomb in space. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity peeks out of their bunkers to see the big boom in the sky. They're throwing high fives and mourning Dan simultaneously, a mix of "we survived" and "oh, we just lost our lunar hero." Fast forward several years, and Earth's back to its old self, minus the threat of space rocks. Kong's back in the wild, probably telling his kangaroo mates about his moon adventures and getting incredulous stares in return. Commander Jenny and her team are moonbound again, tasked with keeping Earth safe from future cosmic party crashers.